everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be reading Soiled Doves, Prostitution in the Early West by Anne Seagraves. We're going to be reading chapter 4 today, but before that we have some images. We also have the hanging of John Million, and yeah, we're going to discuss that a little bit today. So right here we have Julia Buett from Virginia City, Nevada, is a legendary prostitute with a golden heart. This is the woman that was brutally killed in the previous chapter. So here she is. You can pause the images if you want to see them better. But yeah, there's her in her glory. And now on to the hanging of John Million. On January 20th, 1867, the legendary Juliet Buett's dead body was found in her home. She was lying on her left side with her feet halfway off the bed. Sometime during the night, she had been strangled, shot, suffocated, and severely beaten. The press called her murder atrocious and wrote that it was outrageous and cruel. It has quotations there, I'm not being sarcastic. Several months after Julia's funeral, the law arrested John Million, a French drifter who claimed he had not murdered her, but said he knew it was going to happen. Due to the town's hatred for Million, a jury was very difficult to select. The officers couldn't find 12 men who were unbiased, and women in 1868 were not allowed to vote. A jury, however, was eventually chosen. An accused man was found guilty. He was condemned to die by hanging. At dawn on April 27, 1868, John Million met his fate. The hanging became a spectator event, with everyone hoping to catch a glimpse of the murderer. Excited people came by a stage, horseback or on foot, from the nearby towns. All of the saloons were closed for the second time in history of Virginia City, the first being the day of Julia's funeral. 40 deputies and National Guards in full uniforms escorted the carriage carrying Million and Father Mengoli, priest of St. Mary's Catholic Church. The physician's vehicle followed the prisoner, and behind it came the news media and a coffin draped in black, accompanied by the undertaker and his assistants. The gallows were already in place, and several thousand people gathered. The prisoner spoke a few words in French, contending he didn't understand English well enough to defend himself. He kissed the priest, mounted the scaffold, and with 2 minutes, Million was declared dead. The murder of Julia Buett was avenged, and the crowd returned to Virginia City to open the saloons and celebrate. Throughout the entire event, Julia was never referred to as a woman of easy virtue. It was obvious the people finally accepted the goodness in her, despite her profession. From Women of this Era by Anne Seagraves. Alright, so next we're on to some images. So this is Ladies of the Line in Dawson, Yukon Territory. That will be the buildings here. And a brothel in Seltez, Montana. Although this house is far from elegant, it is typical of all the brothels in the Western frontier. So I'm going to show the Ladies of the Line in Dawson Territory here. You can pause, like I said, if you want to see it better. Here you are. And then here's a brothel in Seltez, Montana. There you are. On to the next images. Alright, the first image is a group of working girls at an early mining camp. And next is a hurdy-gurdy dancing in Helena, Montana. A hurdy-gurdy. The hurdy-gurdy, I don't know, for some reason, I don't know if it's the stance or something, it reminds me of like a European dancer or German or something, I don't know. This is a 1905 mugshot of a prostitute in Bonnier County, Idaho. She's got her little bonnet on. I like that she's even smiling. A friend pointed out to me that with the older photos, it took a long time to get a photo in the process, so people didn't really smile because it took so long to get the photo going. So I like that she smiled in it. And then this is a surf on here's Bonnier County, Bonny County rap sheet, but it's in cursive here and such. And it's a bit faded, understandably. And then Lottie Johl. Here we have Lottie. Now on to chapter 4, the love story of Lottie Johl. In 1879, a little girl cried, quote, "Goodbye, God, we're going to Body," end quote, in adapt a description for one of the West's wildest and richest mining towns. Body, California, 8,200 feet above sea level, was a place where men of the 1800s dreamed of wealth, and few were blessed. It was a town noted for violence and death, where whiskey arrived 100 barrels at a time, and the term "fire in the hole" meant drinks for the house. I kind of like that term. I don't know, that's like a small, charming piece of the book, you know? Has a couple little fun details, I guess, amongst the cruelty and horrific side. Body's main street was 1 mile long with frame buildings on either side. Every other one was a bar or gambling parlor. Death was common, for at least one man was shot to death daily. Miners worked for $24 a week, and everyone lived for the moment. It was to this town that Lottie came to pursue her profession, and it was in this town that Lottie died. The known history of Lottie began in Bodie in about 1882. Lottie, like most of the women in her profession, attempted to keep her past a secret. In her case, however, a few exciting facts have been recently uncovered. In 1992, a woman visiting the museum at Bodie State Park saw Lottie's portrait hanging on one of the walls and calmly announced the woman in the portrait was her great-great-grandmother. It was from this woman, Lottie's great-great-granddaughter, that a part of the early portion of Lottie's life had been uncovered. That's really cool. That's awesome. Lottie was born on a farm in Iowa in 1855. There is no reason... excuse me. I'm getting a little tongue-tied. There's no record of her parents. We do not know if the farm was large or small, but we can assume Lottie's life was not easy and that she received very little education. A farmer's daughter of that era worked from dawn until dusk with little reward. Although eligible young men were usually rare in rural Iowa, Lottie managed to find herself a husband. She was an attractive, lovable girl with soft hazel eyes and light curly hair, and a mouth curled up in the corner that she seemed to be smiling all the time. I've never heard that expression, and a mouth curled up. Sorry. And a mouth curled up in the corners that seemed to be smiling all the time. Lottie was noted for her merry laughter and gentle disposition. During this marriage, a little girl was born. Something went wrong, however, for Lottie divorced her husband and took her daughter away. She unsuccessfully attempted to support herself and the child, but Lottie was not skilled in any trade. To make matters worse, a divorced woman in the 1800s was not considered to be respectable. After many months of struggle, Lottie either left her daughter with her parents or her ex-husband and moved away from Iowa. Because she was a gentle girl, it must have been a rough life with few opportunities. It is not known how or when she became a prostitute. Perhaps she started as a hurdy-gurdy dancer and eventually drifted into prostitution. Since Lottie was a farm girl, she had no doubt worked the more familiar rural towns before heading into the larger cities. Without a surname or sobriquet, it is almost impossible to trace her travels through the West. There were many girls named Lottie. It can be assumed that Lottie was high-class prostitution who worked only the better houses. She appeared to be a woman of class and distinction with strong sense of decency despite her profession. With all these attributes, why did Lottie come to the rough town of Bodie? Perhaps it was to meet her fate. On a warm summer's day in 1882, at the age of 27, Lottie stepped down from the stage and calmly looked around the town. The lone woman passenger thanked the driver for a safe trip over the rough road into Bodie. Then she asked directions to Virgin Alley or Maiden Lane. The driver, along with the locals who met the daily stage, appeared shocked at the young woman's request. Both Virgin Alley and Maiden Lane were really one street and part of the red light district. This pretty little thing certainly didn't look like she belonged there. The men shook their heads in dismay, and one politely offered to show her the way. Bodie's red light district adjoined the twisted alleys of Chinatown. It was an era of cribs, brothels, and often a place of desperation. Along these grimed streets and alleys, women of all ages and with varying degrees of beauty offered love for a price. The red light ladies seldom ventured uptown during the day, as they were not welcome. When the sun's last rays disappeared, they dressed in all of their finery and frequented the numerous saloons and dance halls that lined Main Street. A fancy lady would wheel around the floor with an eager partner, then would disappear into darkness from whence she came. Spooky. There were two high-class brothels in Bodie, the High Grade and the Ozark. The women worked there had names like Rosa May, Peekaboo, and Beautiful Doll. They all appeared to be ladies of quality, although it appeared that Lottie worked in one of these houses. She was a step apart from the other girls, for Lottie's was special. She cared. Lottie settled easily into the life of the rough mining town. She spent her days visiting with the other girls, and in the evening she joined in the excitement and bright lights of Main Street. Lottie loved to dance, and she soon became one of the most sought-after partners. Her lively dancing attracted the men, and her friendliness put them at ease. One night, while Lottie was dancing with an admirer, she noticed a large man watching her every moment. His name was Eli Johl, a man who had fallen for a woman he considered to be the prettiest in Bodie, Lottie. Johl was a rough, simple man, not known for his social climbing. He was a German immigrant who was co-owner of the two butcher shops in Bodie. The other partner was Charles Donnelly, a man whose wife was a haughty woman of English descent. While Donnelly stood behind the counter in a white apron and waited on the customers, Johl did the dirty work, slaughtering and packing the meat. In the evening, he would drift down to Main Street for a little diversion. It was there he saw Lottie and lost his heart. Within a short time, Johl began showering the prettiest lady with jewelry, money, and attention. Although he knew she was a prostitute, her love was more important to him than her past. Lottie had always been used and never loved. For her, it was a new experience. She eventually returned Johl's affection, and they were legally married. The proper woman of Bodie was aghast. More than a few men were envious, and Mrs. Donnelly, the wife of Johl's partner, was furious. She felt the marriage was a direct insult to her own social standing and attempted to end the partnership between Elie Jean and her husband. The partnership, however, was stronger than Mrs. Donnelly, for it was business as usual for the two men. Eli bought his wife a 5-room cottage on Main Street near the butcher shop. He filled it with the finest furnishings money could buy, for he wanted his wife to have only the best. Lottie was proud of her home and her husband. She and Eli were so in love they decided to have a party to share their happiness. Eli sent carefully selected invitations to his friends, and Lottie cooked all kinds of fancy foods. She was sure it would be a successful event. When Mrs. Donnelly found out, she discouraged everyone from attending, claiming a prostitute did not deserve such a fine life. No one came to Lottie's party, and Eli knew she would never be accepted. He didn't care about himself, but he knew his wife's heart had been broken. I'm sorry, I guess there's some birds fighting outside, although it's like midnight? That's really weird. Sorry, anyway. Alright, his wife's heart had been broken. Eli and Lottie grew close, wrapping themselves up in their love for each other. Lottie was a good wife. Although she must have missed the friendship of other women and dancing, she never complained to Eli. When he arrived home from the butcher shop each evening, he was greeted by a warm hug and a supper on the table. Perhaps he too missed the excitement of his former life. If he did, he kept it to himself. Mrs. Donnelly was considered to be the local artist and cultural expert. She spent long hours working at her easel, creating paintings which were sold to the local citizens. Her paintings weren't very good, but the people of Bodie thought they were wonderful. While Mrs. Donnelly painted, Lottie sat at her living room window and watched the people passing by. As Eli saw his wife grow lonelier, he decided she needed a hobby. If Mrs. Donnelly could paint, he felt his Lottie could probably do it better. Eli purchased an easel, yards of canvas, paints, and expensive frames, and Lottie became an artist. Her first attempts were awkward, but she did have a certain flair. Lottie's pictures soon covered the walls of their home. Eli was proud and wanted to share his wife's accomplishments. Lottie's past, unfortunately, continued to follow her. Her past, not that she passed. Her past. She was shunned by all. There was only Eli to admire her art. Today, however, others can enjoy Lottie's paintings as one of her mountain scenes and elaborate frames hangs in the museum at Bodie. When the local citizens started planning an extravagant masquerade ball at the Miners' Union Hall, Eli saw this as an opportunity to show the people of Bodie how much Lottie had changed. He sent to San Francisco for the finest costume money could buy. Eli thought the town might accept his wife if they'd only take the time to know her. The ball was to be her own coming out party. When the night of the ball arrived, Eli remained home so that no one would recognize Lottie. She went to the event alone, dressed in her exquisite attire. The dress was a white satin, all covered in seed pearls and diamonds, just imitations, of course, but a sparkling like the real thing. On her blonde curls sat a crown made of the same kind of diamonds and pearls. Lottie was beautiful. Nothing as fine as her costume had ever been seen by the citizens of Bodie. And she was shining with happiness. No one suspected it was Mrs. Johl, for a woman with her background would never have dared to attend an event like this. The committee that was appointed to select the winner knew from the beginning who would win the award for the most outstanding costume. It would go to the lovely lady in the white satin gown. When the signal was given for unmasking, Lottie slowly slipped off her mask, and the citizens of Bodie gasped. Lottie's partner immediately recognized her from his past, and he walked off the dance floor, leaving her standing alone. The respectable people could never allow someone who had been a prostitute to receive such a prestigious award. It just wouldn't be right. Two men whispered something into Lottie's ear, and she ran from the ball in tears. When Eli found out what had happened, he was like a wild bull and wanted to tear the town apart. Lottie, however, no longer cared. She knew there was no way the people would ever respect her. The Johls grew closer, keeping to themselves, their loneliness drawing them together. Then one night, Lottie became ill. Eli sent for a doctor who checked her over and ordered a prescription. Later, after Eli lovingly gave his wife the medication, she became violently ill. Within 24 hours, Lottie was dead. Everyone in Bodie started gossiping. They said it was sad that poor Mrs. Johl had committed suicide. Eli knew better. Although Lottie was unhappy, she would never have committed suicide. He demanded that an autopsy be performed. When the results were final, it was diagnosed that Lottie had been given poison. Who would have poisoned Lottie? Not Eli, for he loved her. The officials decided her death was not intentional. It just happened. Besides, there were more important issues at hand, like where they would allow Eli to bury his wife. The majority declared that since Miss Johl had been a fallen woman, she could not be buried in a consecrated ground. A few stood up for Lottie. They felt that she had been a good, faithful wife to Eli all the years they were married and deserved to be buried in a cemetery. Eli was filled with grief as well as anger. Why should these people who never really knew his wife decide where she was buried? Hadn't they hurt her enough? Finally, a compromise was reached. Lottie Johl would be placed at the edge of the cemetery, just within the fence. Eli Johl built a memorial for his Lottie. He erected his high wrought iron fence around her grave. It was the most elaborate in the cemetery. On Memorial Day, he had a carpenter built a canopy that would cover her entire grave. And with his own hands, Eli decorated it. He wrapped it first with burton, stick of red, white, and blue, with little flags here and there, and then entwined it with paper flowers of all descriptions. At the head of the grave, he placed an enlarged picture of his darling. It was one in colors, showing her blonde hair, blue eyes, diamond earrings, and dress of lace. Eli hoped the citizens of Bodie would visit his wife's grave, and they did. First they came because they were curious, then because they were sad. The people finally realized the love Eli had for his wife. Perhaps a few were even sorry the way they treated her. Many left with tears in their eyes, whether for Eli or Lottie, no one would ever know. Eli continued to live alone in their house, visiting Lottie daily. Every Memorial Day, he would decorate her grave and sit quietly beside it while curious visitors passed to see who was buried there. As the town declined, Eli decided to leave Bodie. He sold the cottage where they were once so much loved and left the past behind. Today, as the desert wind blows over the desert, Lottie Johl sleeps on, her tomb in a silent memory of a town that once boasted of the wickedest men and the wildest streets, in a place that is considered the last of the old-time mining camps. The offer would like to thank Johl Latchman, seasonal aide at Bodie State Historic Park, for her cooperation in obtaining dates and information about Lottie Johl, and Mrs. Helen Evans for allowing her mother's fascinating book, The Story of Bodie by Ella M. Kane, to be used as a reference guide and for short quotes. And 1964, Bodie became a California historic landmark and a National Historic Site. Good. All right, onto some pictures. Sorry, my throat's a little bit more raw in today's reading. It is the end of the day after all. All right. The residence of Lottie and Eli Johl. After the fire of 1932, this building was used as a post office, with Mrs. Mary McDonald presenting the last postmist of Bodie. And the painting is Lottie Johl's painting in Bodie State Historic Park Museum. It's a rather good one, I'd say. It's very well done. Anyway, this is their home. I imagine that's pretty good considering the time. And this is Lottie's painting. Also, I'd say like considerably like impressive for I imagine being self-taught. So I think that's done very well. Here we have Lottie. Lottie's front room stove kept her warm during Bodie's cold winter nights. And the next image is the Grand Central Hotel in Bodie's, California, Circle, 1880. Lottie traveled to Bodie by stagecoach in 1882. It took 36 hours to get to Bodie, and it cost $38. The passengers left the stage in front of this fine hotel. So here is the stove. I like the way it looks personally. It kind of just seems a little steampunk, and I like the swirls and decorations and how it's done. And here's the coach and a little bit of the hotel if you can see it. And a last image, and for the last bit of this video, this is Chicago Joe, Hensley of Helena, Montana. And chapter 5 is the entrepreneurs. So I'm imagining she has something to do with chapter 5, so I'll show her again. Here we are. That's some interesting hair, huh? Alright, so yeah, like I said, chapter 5's for the next video, the entrepreneurs. Hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, that was this video's reading of chapter 4. If you found this interesting, please comment about it. Let me know what made you scratch your head, what you thought was absolutely infuriating, jaw-dropping. Please let me know in the comments down below. Please like this video, subscribe if you have not already, and please hit the little bell notification. Have a great day, everyone. Bye!